They're committing, it looks like, Riv. This could be catastrophic. There's the chain of corruption. It goes down. Sonic Wave is on the Baron. Here gonna be Svenskeren. Safeguards out. And that's all they want. They say we don't even need the fight. The series winning game 3. TSM take down Immortals.
Hello and welcome to week 1 of NALCS Tonight, where we'll catch you up on all the big stories from opening weekend. Helming this maiden voyage with me is Joshua Jatleesman and Aiden Zyrene Moon. Gentlemen, how we doing on this Sunday evening?
It's been great. There's been some exciting series. Like, really, week 1 has actually delivered really hardcore.
Yeah, I was getting a little worried this morning when we saw a few pretty messy games between Envy and COD. I was thinking, man, what has happened to NA Immortals and TSM is just chaos. But then I thought we had a really nice series between Dig and C9 at the end of it.
I'm re-energized after that C9 Dignitas series. I mean, they were going at it. We had a long 3-game series, but a good one at that. However, first things first, we got to get a lay of the land, so let's pull up the standings. C9 is on top of the standings with a 2-0 along with FlyQuest. Of course, we are followed by Team Liquid, Dignitas, Phoenix 1, TSM, Immortals, and Counterlogic Gaming, all in that 1-1 record. And Echo Fox and Team Envy still going to be looking for their first wins. Standings only tell part of the story, though. So, I have to ask you guys, from this first week, what would be the standout matches that you would tell your best friends to go back and watch?
The standout match would be the one that we just saw, quite honestly, for I just cast Team Dignitas versus C9. I felt like that was the highest level of play we saw this weekend. Everyone would have expected coming in that would have been Cloud9 versus TSM, but TSM just didn't show up this week. But Team Dignitas and C9 both did.
Now, that said, TSM versus C9 is a marquee matchup, as it was a rematch of our summer finals, and this time C9 comes out victorious.
Yeah, and that was a really interesting matchup because people were coming in like 50-50, how is Contracts going to perform? Well, the answer to that was he performed brilliantly in that series and a little bit further on in the weekend as well because he dominated that. But Jensen was the big performer in that one for me because he was just bodying Bjergsen in the mid lane with the new synergy he had with Contracts.
Yeah, and the biggest story coming into this one was like, how is Contracts going to fill the shoes of Meteos, and is this going to be a substantial step up for C9? And at least in that game, that is about as amazing of a debut as you can expect from the guy. He went up against Svenskeren, who was a spectacular jungle last split, and he was positive in every game by a wide margin.
Yeah, and I got to actually talk to Jack a little bit about the pickup of Contracts backstage, and he was saying, you know, we've tried a little bit of everything. We've had High in the jungle with great shot calling. We've had Rush, who's mechanically excellent, and then we've also had Meteos, who knows how to farm and route. But now we have a guy who's like, right there, that's the sweet spot. So he thinks that Contracts is actually what they needed because he's been trying to get him for so long, ever since he saw him play on Ember. He's been trying to get that contract. Finally has it and has him in the LCS, and he thinks it might be what C9 need to win again.
And I enjoyed that interview with Jensen where he said their expectation was to have somewhat of a slow or rocky start, given the transition from a very vocal, outspoken, and somewhat of a leader in Meteos in the jungle to the rookie, who's going to have to step up and deal with nerves and perform at the same time. But so far, it's working.
Yeah. And I was a little concerned as well about C9 having a 17-year-old on that team, especially with someone like Sneaky, who's been in the competitive scene for now 6 or 7 years. But it seems to be working really well. I think one thing that's super interesting about this is Jensen also was like this prodigy when he was 17, but he was a toxic solo queue player.
But we got a lot of those in NA.
He still understands kind of like what it was like to be this super skilled young kid, and I'm hoping there's some mentorship going on there because Contract still has a lot of room to grow.
Yeah, I also asked him about Contract's attitude when I was talking to Jack, and he's like, it's really good because when he makes a mistake, he's just like, that's my bad, it's my fault. I'm crap. And he's actually the person who calls himself out. So he's very humble. So it's really interesting. Doesn't seem to be quite the leadership type right now, but he is willing to get himself killed to get Jensen ahead. And he thinks that that's what Jensen really needs in that mid lane.
Got to be able to recognize the mistakes in order to correct them. Zyrene, hit me with another matchup that you were excited about from this weekend.
All right. Fly versus Team Liquid, because that one was really insane. People were like, Team Liquid's just going to run all over them. Lorlo's been looking great in the top lane, but, you know, High just comes back. Lorlo, he's wrecking the first game on this Fiora, and he's doing so damn well. I mean, it's completely night and day from the way he was playing in 2016.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that he was able to show that he has prowess on those carry champions. Now, I understand that back in the day in solo queue, he played carries, but as you mentioned, last year, 2016, more relegated to tanks. Here, he's showing the Fiora gets banned later in the series.
Yeah, and also I have to just shout out to High right here because people were thinking, this guy's a jungler, what's he doing coming back to the league? He's never going to have the mechanics.
This guy's a jungler? Has anyone ever thought that about High?
Well, I did when he was a jungler.
He originally was.
Yeah, jungler, support, mid laner, fill, but really, you don't expect the dude to come into the LCS right away and go 10-1 on Corki, but that's what he did.
No, absolutely not.
Did an amazing job on the Corki, but also Hai has some really great statistics. He's got 32.5% of his team's damage share, highest in the entire league.
Wow.
He's also highest in damage per minute in the entire league. He did some really heavy lifting. So Hai, I mean, the old man still got it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Like
too.
23.
I know, the old man has still got it.
Well, he said it himself yesterday in the interview with Freak. He's like, I feel old up here on the stage. And Freak was like, you've got Lemon Nation already. But anyway, with Hai, I think, too, it's still very clear that he's got the shot-calling prowess, even more evident when the team is ahead, that they know how to operate. But the biggest story for FlyQuest coming into this weekend is the fact that they were not expected to go 2-0. They were expected to be a bottom-tier LCS team. And now, although their opponents were not necessarily the most difficult, they'll have to face this whole split, they put up good performances and are probably going to start changing some minds moving into week 2 if they keep it up.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how it evolves because Envy had a bunch of subs, so you're kind of expecting that. But then Team Liquid looked good against CLG, so that win is the impressive one to me. And the test for FlyQuest is going to be whether or not Balls, Hai, and Altec can hold up against the strength of the other lanes, because Hai is an amazing shot caller and knows exactly how to close a game that they are ahead in, but getting that lead is going to be the inconsistent thing for those guys, so that's going to be the real test.
Exactly.
Yeah, and even though they went up against Envy, who had a substitute roster, and TL, that was a surprising one, like you said, because TL had some international experience because they played at IEM Gyeonggi, and they've had a lot of time together. Whereas FlyQuest, they barely picked up Moon before this season even started, and I actually ran into them when I was leaving the studio, and I'm like, what are you guys doing here, Moon and Altec? And he's like, we're playing. We don't have a team house. They literally just got a team house. They've been scrimming here at the studio, so they haven't had a lot of resources available to them. It's been very surprising for us, but also Moon was saying it's a surprising victory for him as well.
All right, well, that was a very exciting series today. Time to bring it all full circle, Jat, to what you mentioned, this C9 Dignitas game that we concluded the day with. Give me your thoughts.
It was awesome, really, because the closeness of all these games, as well as the diversity in the team compositions that we saw, really took this series to the next level. I mean, think about this, 40 minutes, Elder Drake fight. This was a mistake, in my opinion, by Team Dignitas, not fighting in time, because it was essentially a 4v5, but at this point, they let Jensen kind of go free in the back line, and then it just went on to the rest of the great series.
Yeah, it was pretty much, you had a little bit of everything. You had one person doing incredibly well one game, and then the next game not as well. We even had Ray play 2 of the first games, and then Impact comes in, saves the day a little bit in the top lane, stays even with Someday, and now we're looking at what could possibly be a top of the table battle later on in the split.
Yeah, you could see a 90 CS lead there for Someday at the end of it, but they bring Impact back in now, and he is just a giant front line that no one could get through. And this was the big thing that differentiated Impact. And also, not only from Ray, but almost the rest of the top laners in NA, is he is so good at team fighting on tanks, and it just allowed so much for C9 in this last game.
Yeah, and a Smoothie picking up player of the game here on this Terra game, some amazing ultimates, but for me, one of the most exciting things about this series was outside of Summoner's Rift itself, both of these teams seem to have a fairly solid grasp of the new 10-ban, or rather pick-and-ban system, at least more so than some other teams. We had some really intelligent drafting.
Yeah, exactly, because when it's always just, oh, Rengar, Camille LeBlanc on one side, and then, well, they didn't pick an AD carry, so we will ban the other two, and this gives us advantage. Those are those, like, cookie-cutter advantages, but neither team were giving those up, and they were having to find their edges in more creative ways.
And Cloud9 taking some time to meet with fans out in the studio after their 2-0 start to the week. But Zyrene, let's go back onto this pick ban talk here, because I think a lot of teams will look at this series to help them better understand how they should be drafting.
Yeah, and I love that Cloud9 have been trying some new things as well. Like, I think they're one of the only teams to actually pull out Tarek in the North American LCS. They were the first one to show us Fizz, and then they've actually been going and picking other things like Shen in the top lane. So are other teams going to start picking these things up coming into week 2? Because you probably have to when you're going up against Cloud9, or at least have them in your champion pools so that you don't have the situation where it's like, man, they just hit us with this random pick like Tarek. What are we going to do when we come to game 2? Have it practiced so you can at least contest it or know how to play against it.
All right, well, it's still a small sample size, but already a few players are making a name for themselves. So right now, I'm going to ask you to put you on the spot. Who are your OP5 from this week?
Yeah, we're bringing back OP5. I mean, it does kind of start in the top lane with Someday. Even though he wasn't able to pull out that series against Cloud9, this dude was the reason they won the second game in the series and also hard carried a lot of their wins in their series yesterday.
Yeah, and another guy in the jungle, Acadian, hard carrying until about the 20-minute mark. But that's the thing, is he was getting so much done for Echo Fox. Their early game problems are non-existent now. They're getting the outer turrets. He's 5 for 5 in first bloods. He was really setting his team up. It's just getting that next piece for that squad.
Yeah, then the rest of it is the Cloud9 Love Fest,
Yeah.
obviously. They played so well this week. Yes, they are one of two teams that go 2-0. FlyQuest was the other team that went 2-0. But you look at the competition they played against, TSM and Team Dignitas. And they were impressive in all of them. Jensen's scoreline was incredible. Sneaky and Smoothie, whether they were in winning matchups, they won them by a lot.
Yeah.
If they were in losing matchups, they would go even or win them. So really improving on the laning phase, as well as already having strong team fighting instincts.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting for Cloud9 moving forward, because as they were moving into Worlds, we were doing research on who's getting all the CS past the 15-minute mark, right? And it was Jensen. Well, Jensen still leads the league in CS per minute at 10.3 per minute.
That's insane.
But Sneaky is number 2 at 9.4. So he is right behind him. So the farm is not just getting divided up and funneled all into Jensen. They're actually getting it into both. And like you said, Jack, Sneaky's winning lane in lanes that maybe they shouldn't be winning.
Yeah, the Sneaky Smoothie duo is looking good, and you got to assume that some of that could be due to the fact that they brought in a coach specifically for that bot lane duo. So here we see them stepping up. But someday, let's go back to him, because once again, expectations coming in to this split. A lot of people are saying this is the highest value import for the North American region, and he is doing just that. He's proving his worth.
That highest CS per minute for all the top laners, so he has actually been getting like 140 CS advantages over people, wrecking their score lines, and being very brave on a variety of champions. He's played the Fiora, he's played the Maokai, and shown that he can actually do really good jobs.
Carried a game on Maokai.
On
Rare
Poppy
to
as well.
say
Like,
that
what is going on?
You know? And then he follows that up with a Fiora carry. So he's showing he's got a mastery in both directions. If we now jump back to Acadian, I think the craziest thing about him as a player is that an 0-2 week, and yet he makes OP5 because of how stellar this guy was playing in those early games.
He said before the week he didn't want to be one of those rookie junglers that sits back and is passive. So he immediately goes for the high reward ganks. Even though he got first blood in all his games, he was also the first to gank. So everything he was doing was working. So 5 for 5 in his first blood. He also hard carried Echo Fox in that Graves game. And he couldn't pull out a win, but he was damn close to doing it.
Oh yeah, highest kill share for anybody in the league and highest kills of all junglers. He's being incredibly aggressive, and for a rookie debut, you really couldn't ask for much more, except for wins in the game.
Yeah, you could ask for much more. You'd be like, I would like you to win, please.
Right.
But debut on Echo Fox team who's still looking to make some strides, very impressive.
Right, that's got to feel good. Honorable mention here, just we got to talk about Lorlo as a player in the top lane. Again, relegated to tanks for all of 2016. Today was able to show that he can play those carries as well. But in general, for a Team Liquid team that was struggling throughout the weekend in disadvantages or deficits, he seemed to be the one constant.
Yeah, his scoreline is 19-3 and 27. He only died 3 times throughout the 5 games that he played, and he carried on tanks, and he also had really good initiations. That was the thing that really stood out to me, because before he was rather timid on things like hooks or Maokai Ws. Now he's just jumping right in at the right time.
Yeah, especially with the player who started his career with such low expectations and really poor performances. Seeing the growth this guy has had is really impressive, and it'll be so interesting to see if he can sustain it against Someday and Impact and Looper and Flame. There's so many guys he's going to be competing
I mean, that's the thing. We're on week 1, setting a high bar. Now he's got to live up to it for the rest of the season. Well, at the beginning of the day, we asked you for some questions, and now we're going to answer them. So first up, C9 Jeff asks, are Malzahar and Zyra the only S-tier supports currently? Thoughts on where Bard and Karma fall?
He got to ask 2 questions.
Yeah, that is 2 questions, you cheater. No, but we'll answer them both just this one time.
Yeah, Zyra and... See, it depends on what you consider S tier, because if S tier is I can blind pick this, then I actually do consider those 2 to be okay. But the Misfortune support has actually jumped up. A lot of people still don't like it because it's not as utility-based, but I think that those 2 would be my clear God tier if you can ban out Misfortune.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those 2 are the highest tier, even though Zyra is above that, because I'd much rather have Zyra into Malzahar.
Okay.
Where Karma and Bard fall, I definitely think Karma is above that, and Bard is in this kind of questionable place, because it's still a good pick if you've mastered the champion and know the matchups, but it is not a meta pick right now whatsoever.
Yeah, maybe we'll see Aframu pull out the Bard at some point. Next up, the only Austin asks, will champions like Yasuo get played due to his armor shred on crits versus tanks?
Oh, man. I personally don't think so.
That's okay. The answer, it's okay. The answer's no.
I mean, I hate to let this guy down if that's what he really wants, but I gotta tell him the truth. It's not really gonna happen.
Yeah.
I remember a Yasuo against Nautilus that didn't go very well last year in the playoffs. Lorlo was Nautilus. He did great.
Yeah. I also remember one that went well, though. Remember, it was Darshan a few years
Take
ago.
your Yasuo to solo queue. You'll find
Yeah.
lots of success there.
It's spectacular in solo queue. I think pro games are a little bit too controlled and are decided too quickly to see it reliably.
Yep.
Doesn't mean we can't see it as a one-off pick.
All right.
I got a final one for us, though.
Oh.
And finally,
I don't get to ask.
23 asks, how many times will Dash change his hair color this year?
Well, we already got one.
The over-under
There's
is-
already color in there at the very beginning of the season. I don't know.
I'm setting the over-under on
Do I
2.5.
have to give an answer and then stick to that? That feels dangerous.
Yes.
Question for the desk. I'm putting the over-under 2.5.
2.5.
2.5.
Well,
That's
no,
how
that's
over-under
that's
means. That
proper
means
over-
if you
it's
pick
proper
over
over-under.
or under,
Yeah.
you're never dying at 2.5 times unless somehow.
This could
I'll
be a
go
half tie,
over.
though.
Never know.
No,
I'll go
okay.
over
You're
on
going
that
over?
one.
You
Oh.
think I'm at 3 times?
I think you
including
go
this
3
one?
times.
All right, we'll see what I do. I have no idea. Unfortunately, I can't answer that for you. But we have to thank you all for submitting your questions, and we hope you enjoyed this first week of the NALCS as much as we did. Thank you for watching. This is Dash, Cyrene, and Jad signing off on NALCS tonight. We'll see you next weekend.